Now, today is World Book Day, where events are taking place across the globe to introduce children to literature and encourage them to take more of an interest in the written word. It's also been revealed that after 40 years, the children's book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, is still going strong as it's been voted the best children's bedtime story in a survey of parents. So, with our own children, how important was it for us to encourage them to read good literature?
I think it is important. I failed completely. My boys don't read at all. Well, and all through their childhood, you know, I read to them and they read and they loved it. And then there's this point, I don't know whether it's football or whether it's computers or what it is, but I just lost them and I feel very guilty about it. And I'm not being snobby about this before Colleen has a go at me, but it's like everything. No, because I'm not saying, oh, my dear, one must read the classics from cover to cover. But if you don't start at the top and aim high, and at least within the school try and get people to read the best that there is, you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy for them to read a comic as well, anything to get them to read, to use their imaginations. But I think that this idea that we used to be taught books and we were read to in school, or we had books that we all read and then we discussed, and that whole thing now with children about choosing their books, but it's good, but equally they might choose a boring book and then you've lost them. And I do think that education is about the best you can have in those years, and then hopefully after that something will happen and you'll see the light and enjoy. But because there's nothing, it's fantastic to read.
I must admit, in terms of the choosing your own books thing, because Finley's going through that at the moment. He's 8, and you know, obviously he's just at the beginning, if you like, of his learning, of his reading life. And to keep him interested, he has been allowed to choose his own books, and actually that's really helped him, because rather than reading something he's not that interested in, they're quite funny little stories now that they have. So when we do it together at home, you know, he reads to me, we can talk about it and engage with it a little bit more. And at his age, I think it helps. I do agree with you, though, that as you get older, that you need to be stretched a little bit. You need to be pushed, and that's where the Dickens and the Shakespeare and all that sort of thing. Although you might not read it in everyday life, if at school you need to be pushed
done well. That's the trouble.
I think as long as they're reading, and I am impressed at the moment with the school that, you know, it's really big at school about reading. I mean, it's the one homework Kira has every single night is reading. And she loves reading books. And I grew up, you know, my dad was a very big reader, and we all became readers, and I remember him sitting there reading me bedtime stories and stuff. I do think, I love the fact that kids read, and I do think it's important. But I don't think, you know, there is a bit of snobbery about, yes, but they should, you know, read the classics and they should read Shakespeare. And I think the problem is that when they get to that part of school where they actually do have to read Shakespeare, some of them, especially if they're doing drama, that's when they go, oh, I'm bored reading. Because it's hard. It's a hard read.
Not taught well,
not that I know, because I've never read Shakespeare.
That's it. I mean, if it's not inspiringly taught, then they're going to be bored. I have to say, in my experience of talking to other mums and dads about this, it does seem that no matter how well read, no matter how encouraging the parent is or not, that your children will decide whether they're booky or whether they're not. You know, and Matthew, who's now 21, I could not force him. He wasn't even that interested in being read to, unlike Louis, but he won't let me do voices, which I get really fed up about. He goes, Mummy, can you just do it without the voices? But Louis absolutely loves it, and like at Finley's school, they're in a band, you know, in a coloured band, so they could sort of choose within that. But, I mean, I loved it, but the trouble is, I still like the same books that I had then. I still get a little sort of excited thing over finding a Janet and John book, not the ones that have been relaunched, but I'll go in and Louis goes to me, why are you smelling those books? It's because there's a smell of a Janet and John book that just isn't anywhere else. And that like that. Oh, do you remember? And there was a certain green which I can't see. I mean, I think that's even a slightly more modern one than there was. But I just love those, just the pleasure, and I can still remember the little stories and everything. I love Janet and John books.
Did you read them or smell them?
I smelt them. I smelt them first, and I can still smell me famous 5, as the actress said. Yeah, famous 5 and Secret... What was it? And Secret 7.
Yeah. Well, you see, I was a classic. I did Wind in the Willows, you see. There's nothing like... Well, Ratty and Mole, you know, you can't beat them, really, can you? Never mind Janet and John. Talking about, you know, reading funny voices, have you ever done a CD, an audio CD of a children's book, and then played it to your children? I used to play them to my children, and I'd done them professionally, and I'd proudly put it in, and we'd all be listening, and I'd be...
They were just...
I'd bored myself to sleep.
I know. But the thing is, just quickly, Matthew, who was never a reader at school, you couldn't force him to read at all, now at nearly 21, devours them.
Yeah.
Absolutely devours them. Loves all sort of philosophy books, you know, anything to do with Stephen Fry. Well, it does save him talking to me, yeah.
He's probably sniffing them, you don't know.
OK, if you're